Dr. Shailaja Reddy. I'm a functional medicine physician, practices in Boston. All information given about health conditions, treatment products, and dosages are for educational purpose only and do not constitute a medical advice. And this is my information in case you want to reach me. And this is what is functional medicine. And this is just not a medicine that we give pill for an ill and we treat the root causes of the disease and we look at the reversal of the chronic diseases. And today we're going to talk about salts and how to pick the healthiest salt for the cooking and for other purpose. So objectives today are types of salt and what is unrefined and what is refined salt. And iodized salt, is it necessary? That's a very common question. And natural sources of iodine and what other salt substitutes and natural ways of replacing the salt. And we all know that this is Gandhi's salt march, my favorite picture. In ancient history, humans traded salt, actually traveling for miles to ensure they had adequate supplies for their people. So this was not just for taste, but was to provide them with the trace minerals necessary for good health and fertility. So, so this is, how is it made basically? It is a mineral that's composed primarily of, sodium chloride. Hello. Normally it's obtained from seawater or rock deposits. It's essential for human life in small quantities, but it is harmful in excess. Salt is one of the oldest and most ubiquitous food seasonings. And salt is an important method. Why? It is because it kills the bacteria, right? Bacteria, fungi, and other organisms. That's why we use it for preservation. So in the past, we did not have any refined salt. We just used, whatever we used was unrefined salt. Unrefined salt doesn't have any chemicals, so we were able to use it for preservation. So what does it do inside our body? It regulates the water content and it pulls actually the water into the blood vessels. Of course, that's why it raises our blood pressure, but it is necessary. So when you eat too much and when your kidneys are probably not functioning that well, it can raise the blood pressure. Otherwise, it is actually necessary for us to keep the blood pressure balanced. And refined salt is what we get, like, which is a table salt. So the unrefined salt is, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with, but back home, this is all we used to have, unrefined salt. We didn't have the refining process at that time, right? When you refine the salt, this is treated at very high temperatures and a lot of preservatives are added. And so you know that the salt flows very freely, right? The table salt. So caking substances, anti-caking substances, they're all used. They're all very strong chemicals and they disrupt your gut bacteria if you consume them too much. So unrefined salt. So what does it have? It has only like 55% sodium chloride compared to 99% of the refined salt. And it has got a lot of other minerals too. There are about 70 different other minerals. Even some minerals that we don't even know exist, that comes in the unrefined salt, but it is not heated that much. It's actually naturally sun-dried salt. I mean, at least some good companies make it like that. So I'm going to discuss that later. And this is what I have done some research, and refined salt is like, table salt, kosher salt, and the black salt, and all these salts. Unrefined salt, these are some of the companies that in my research, came out, and in other blogs that I do for functional medicine, this came up in the discussion. These are the brands that people recommend. So I will show you what I use in my kitchen. So that's what I can talk about, because I don't know that much about the other brands, but these are recommended by other people. Celtic salt is what I use, and I'll talk about it in the next slide. And Sicilian sea salt is also recommended, and Malden sea salt, Florida salt, and New Zealand salt, Maine sea salt. These are all the good refined salts. I know we tend to think, like, the moment you see sea salt there on the label, don't just assume that it is unrefined salt and it's good for you, because a lot of these sea salts go through the same processing as the refined salts, because they go through the same temperature, and because to make it such a free flowing, they have to add substances, right? So Not all the sea salts are good. So I just want to bring that point. Then, so this is Himalayan salt. Where does the Himalayan salt come from? This comes from rocks, basically. Um, it contains iodine sulfide, because apparently these rocks, when you read the history, they were originally like submerged in water, so it has got salt in it, and now it is not in the water, but when you refine it, you get the salt out of it. But the only thing is, depending on the process, how they are purifying it, you can have some impurities in the Himalayan salt also. So if it is a pure salt, it is fine. But I'm going to show you what is the next one that I prefer. This is Celtic sea salt. Actually, this is available in Boston. I'm sure there are good other salts that I mentioned, but this is what I use for all my cooking. This one, you can get it from the local health food store, or you can order it online. This salt is sun-dried ocean salt. It was hand harvested and stone ground. It is environmentally protected, from France it's coming from. So it has been there like for almost like 1500 years there. It's the same process is still used, and there is no bleach and no talcum or silica, anything in this. There are about like 70 to 80 minerals in addition to the salt in this. So the moment I tell people about using this Celtic sea salt, the next question that comes right away, I know you must be thinking about the same thing, because the table salt contains iodine, right? So what are we doing? Like, this doesn't have iodine fortified, right? So the answer to that is refined salt is fortified with iodine, which probably is insufficient for our body's iodine needs anyway, especially because of the bioavailability. Anytime when you extract the minerals out of anything, like any refined process, and put it back, the bioavailability is not the same. So this one naturally contains iodine, and in addition to iodine, there are so many other minerals. For our body to function, just iodine is not enough. Even for the thyroid glands, you need some other minerals, to function. But this is how you want to get the iodine. But at the same time, if you're focusing on iodine, there are some natural ways of getting iodine, which I'm going to show in the pictures. That's how you should get iodine, but not from the fortification in the salt, in my opinion. And of course, even a lot of research also showed that. And this is, if you know what this is called dried kelp. This is kelp is nothing but seaweed. Seaweed is like, these are the plants in the ocean. So this particular plant contains a lot of iodine in it. If you have any thyroid problems, or if you had your iodine checked, if it is low, this is actually the best way of substituting for iodine. So I use this actually in a lot of my cooking. Even a small amount of this leaf, if you throw it in soups, rasam, sambar, anything, it releases a lot of iodine. But the only thing is, if you want to just put it in the smoothies, there is that marine flavor to it. So some people may not like it. And this is another seaweed, which is called dulse flakes. There are several of them, these two I usually use. And this is a picture that has got different kinds of salt. So I'm showing you the one in the center is a table salt. This one is a kosher salt. Look at the salt here. This one is a kosher salt. What is kosher salt? Some people tend to think that this is healthier salt, like unrefined salt. That is not true. The kosher salt, it dissolves faster. You can see the crystals there, right? So it dissolves faster, and it is named for its use in the preparation of meat according to requirements of Jewish dietary guidelines. It is perfect to cure the meat, which is a step in the koshering process. This can come from earth or sea, it doesn't matter. It is actually not the refined, not unrefined salt. It goes through the same refining process and the chemicals and the anti-caking substances and all, but it has got less chemicals than the table salt. That's the only difference. And this one is Celtic salt. It looks gray, right? You can see it because they don't use any bleaching agents in that. And also you can see that there is a lot of moisture to that salt. When you have moisture to any salt, it retains the minerals. So you really, even though it is convenient on the table to sprinkle, but the salt with the moisture is the right salt. So what I usually do is I get this Celtic salt and just a small portion of it, I blend it, so it comes out fine. So I use that on the table. This actually is a very good salt in my experience. And you see the black salt here, right? So what is black salt? We all know that it's called kala namak. It's basically very popular in India. It is an unrefined salt. It is unrefined salt in India, but it does go through some refining process, but not as much as table salt. They put it to the furnace to the high temperatures, and it has got some spices to it. It has got amla, and it's got, I think, some charcoal, that type of things are there too. So it is mainly a flavoring salt. It is not really the salt that we use for everything. So this is Himalayan salt. The Celtic, this is the celery salt. This one I'm going to discuss. I have the slide because this is something that I made at home. So I'll share you the next slide. So these are the salt substitutes. So a lot of patients ask me like, no, I can't take salt, so I'm using the salt substitute. Salt substitutes are not as safe as we think because they contain other substances like, potassium chloride, and again, they have a lot of chemicals in them. So that is actually not an option. You don't want to do too much of the potassium also, and the chemicals too. And these are healthy options. So if you want a little salty taste and you don't want to put the salt, right? So these are organic soy sauce, and this is the middle one, which is Bragg liquid aminos, and these are all basically soy sauce. If you want just to replace the salt and to get that same flavor, you can put a little bit of these substances to have a salty taste instead of salt. And this is also salt seasoning. This is actually one good one. This has got kelp in it, which is like a natural way of getting iodine instead of the iodized salt. And this is my dehydrator. These are the celery that you see on the top. And after you dehydrate, this is how it looks. And once you put the dehydrated celery in the blender, this is how it comes. When you make soups, we all put celery in our smoothies and soups. If you can just add a little bit of this instead of salt, this is an excellent choice. I mean, I'm not expecting that everyone would do it, but at least for the people who have patience and the dehydrator, this is not a bad option to use. And this is my information, but at the end, my recommendations is don't use any salt substitutes, and do not add any table salt. Use a little rock salt or hand harvested salt in cooking, basically. And you don't have to use iodized salt, just use kelp instead, or any other seaweed. Seaweed is rich in calcium, magnesium, iodine, and many more things than just iodine. Just remember that. And avoid salty condiments or canned or frozen food, salty snacks. And actually the salt comes mostly from these things that you use, the condiments. You have to always keep in mind, you don't taste it, but a lot of salt is inside. Actually, things like sodas, that's a discussion for another day. There's a lot of salt in these things. Thank you so much. That's it for today. You're free for questions. Let me stop sharing.
Dr. Shailaja Garu, I have a question, Dr. Shailaja Garu.
One second, Nitinji. Let me stop sharing here.